Okay. If I'm on my phone, it's because this is where my notes are with my notes and questions. Okay. So, there's no reception here. Maybe we should just start with a little spiel about ourselves.
Yeah.
You go first.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm Alyssa. I'm the author of Secrets of Giants. I'm also a journalist. This is my first book.
I'm Casey Johnston. I write a newsletter called She's a Beast, and I have a program called Lift Off Couch to Barbell. And I brought little cards over there about it if you're interested in one of those. And yeah, journalist, writer, and editor, and worked for a bunch of different places, and now here we are. Okay, my notes still aren't loading, but maybe I would love to get a show of hands in here really quick of like, how many of you lift already? No, okay. How many interested in lifting if you don't? Is something. Okay. We weren't sure if it would be like all lifters, no lifters, so it's like a mixed crowd. So that's interesting. Okay. Well, while I'm still waiting for you don't have Wi-Fi, do you here?
Yes, we do. The password is let's read.
Let's read. Okay. Bookshop guest.
Just
Cities
Oh,
capitals.
sorry. They're struggling. Okay. Maybe let's just start with. I know the first question was an easy one. It was just like, what gave you the idea for the book? What moved you to write this book?
So I had been lifting for 2 years. I was getting ready for a competition in 2016. I was at my gym and I was getting ready to lift an Atlas stone, which for my non-lifters, it's basically like a giant boulder that you are picking up. And when I was picking it up, I remember feeling this level of tired that was not, this is a hard workout tired, but like I could nap right here on this AstroTurf tired. And I knew something was kind of off. And when I went home that day, I took a pregnancy test and I found out that I was pregnant. And then 3 weeks after that, I found out that I was miscarrying. And I very quickly went from feeling the strongest that I ever had in my whole life to feeling the weakest and just broken and vulnerable. And one of the things I did during that time, one of the only things that actually helped, was that I kept returning to the gym. I kept lifting alongside, my coach and making sure I was doing it all safely. And I would find that when I would leave the gym, I would walk a little bit taller. I would walk with my shoulders pulled back. I felt more capable. I felt more powerful again. I felt like I had a little bit more trust in my body. And it made me think, okay, well, maybe I've had this thing all wrong this whole time. And maybe lifting isn't actually about how much weight you put on the bar, but how you take the things that you learn inside the gym and apply them to the struggles that you go through outside of the gym. So I went on this year-long kind of journey into the world of strength to try and get answers to that question.
So if we rewind back to the beginning, you were already lifting at this point when you started doing the Atlas stone.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you been lifting?
I had been lifting for 2 years.
Oh, okay. So you were
so I was
like
in
well
it.
into
I was
it.
in it. Yeah. I
Okay.
had started, I was not an athletic kid at all. And I really only picked it up. I started running right after graduating university and ran marathons and then decided to do triathlons. And after all of that, I was kind of like, well, what's the next big thing that I should do? And I joined a CrossFit gym. And I met someone at CrossFit who said, you have to try strongman. And I went, and I remember like literally my first day in this strongman gym, I picked up a 90-pound Atlas stone. And the first time I picked it up, it just fell right back to the ground. And I was kind of, oh my God, everybody's looking at me and I've done everything wrong. And then I got it and I picked it up and I got it to my shoulder. And when I put it back down on the ground, I remember feeling like I could lift anything in this gym. I remember getting on the subway and being like, I could take anybody on this subway. I can do anything. And that was it for me. I've been doing it now for like 9 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
CrossFit, anyone? Show of hands. One CrossFit. I've never done CrossFit. I should probably shouldn't touch this. I've never done CrossFit, and it's intimidating to me. the intensity of it. Do you still do it? Do you still like do all of these things still?
I still run,
Okay.
but I not CrossFit anymore. Well, I mean, like occasionally if I'm traveling or something, I will hop into the CrossFit gym. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. That's great. So let me ask a real question.
Yes.
So you mentioned your miscarriage, being pregnant, miscarriage. And I wanted you to talk a little bit more about, there's a line in the book that lifting reminded you again and again that you could endure hard things. I wondered if you could talk a little more about that or give even an example from the book of a hard thing, a way that lifting transferred to real life for you.
Yeah, so after I went through that miscarriage, I didn't get pregnant again right away. I was at a fertility clinic for a couple of months. And you go in, for anybody who's ever been to a fertility clinic, it's terrible and soul crushing. You go in and you're just kind of being like poked and prodded and then told that you're not pregnant month after month. And that experience with lifting, understanding that I could kind of endure really difficult things over and over again, helped me throughout all of those months of going in there and wanting something really badly for my body and having that not happen. And that's a tough thing. Like you know, you're told your body's biologically programmed to do this thing, and then it doesn't do that thing. And even though from lifting and running, you've learned over the time of doing all that stuff that you can tell your body what to do. You can tell it to run faster and farther, and you can tell it to lift heavier, and it will do those things. And then to kind of have that not happen, lifting really helped me, I guess, kind of endure that. Yeah.
To bring this back, since we're in a bookstore talking about writing a book, did you see any interplay between like the lessons you learned lifting and your like writing process, creative process, like how all that came together?
So much. Oh my God. It was funny to like have, some people, you're writing a book and then your outlet kind of becomes whatever physical activity you do that is completely separate from the thing you're writing a book about. So it was very odd to sort of take my breaks from the book and then go and do the thing that I was writing about. But it did really help. I would go and I have a gym in my garage, and I would go into the garage and just like lift something and kind of work out whatever frustration I had with something not coming together in the book. I also, running, still really helped with that. A lot of times if I needed to work through a problem with like the narrative arc of the book or something, I would go out and I would run through it, and eventually I would kind of come to what I wanted to come to.
Do you find running helps better than lifting?
It does, because
Okay.
because your brain kind of wanders when you run, right? Like your brain you can't wander so much when you're trying to pick up something heavy, which is its own wonderful things. I think when you are lifting heavy, one of the best things about it is that you have to be laser focused on what you're doing. So it really kind of puts you in the moment, which is pretty incredible.
That's like a tip for all of us. I think I find that too, that like I enjoy the break from thinking that lifting can be, but it is not a good time to like work out problems. You're just like, it's like you're going somewhere else entirely for an hour, and then you come out and you're like, oh, I didn't think about any of my issues for an hour, and that was nice, but it's not creative process wise.
Yeah.
A different offering.
Because if you're putting a barbell over your head and you're like, I'm just like working through the day's problems, like that's sort of terrible.
Right.
It doesn't work so well.
So you mentioned in the book you have 2 daughters. If this is something that's like you want to elaborate on, what do you sort of hope to teach them about strength or about their relationships with their bodies or exercise or even things that you learned while writing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that we kind of talk about in my house is we never say I can't, we say I'll try. And that I try to teach them that for everything in life, whether it's just like I want to get this thing from my shelf, I can't do it. I'm like, well, have you worked out how to do that? You thought about stacking something up, whatever it is. Like, we're going to try it first. But I also think, I have 2 daughters and body image is a real thing. And I bring them into the gym with me, and I want them to see that being strong is awesome. I'm really careful that I don't talk about dieting or diet culture or any of that stuff with them. And when they come in and they, they'll pick up like little versions of things in the garage. So my 5.5-year-old can pick up 25-pound kettlebell. Which is pretty cool. And she does it and she loves it. It's really cute. It's really cute. And one day we had like a 5-pound med ball. And I also had actual Atlas stones, and she'd seen me looking at Atlas stones. And one day she picked up a 5-pound med ball, did like the proper form, like pulled it up, put it on her shoulder, and did this. I was like, oh my god,
That's
yes!
great.
I want them to love. I want them to love working out for the sake of working out, and not for like, whatever we're told is going to happen from that. And we will leave that garage workout and then go make a smoothie, and I will talk to them about why we're having that, and what's in it, and why there is protein in it to build up our muscles, and why there's carbs in it for energy, and why there's fat in it to keep us, fuller and feeling better longer, and try to use, non-diet protein for that stuff.
Do you feel like it's like working insofar as like the programming from like the world that they must hear at school and all of these things that,
Yeah.
I mean, we all hear it. Do you feel like it's
I would
difficult to
say-
overcome?
Yeah, like I would say, they're little enough that it doesn't affect them, but you do hear about kids that age hearing that kind of stuff. It hasn't come up yet. Like I haven't heard them say anything about it. And I know that they're going to go through all of that, right? It doesn't matter. Like you can have your parents can have the healthiest relationship ever with food and fitness, and they're still going to read a magazine or go on social media, I guess, more likely at this point in their lives. They're not reading YM like I was. Just but they don't have that. Yeah.
Well, this maybe dovetails a little bit if you have a chapter. I forget if it's like a fully isolated chapter, but you mentioned it in the chapter on bulkiness, the sort of changes to a body that come from strength training, or as I feel like I have found, not as much as was sold to us growing up. Maybe let's dive into that a little. Like, how did you work through that thought process for yourself when it was like I was going from fear to like acceptance to maybe realizing it's not what you thought it was?
Yeah, and I know you have a lot of feelings on this too, and Casey's interviewed in that chapter in the book. But I thought what was really interesting was, like when you want to start lifting weights, you get told two things, right? One is don't lift heavy or you're going to get bulky. Or you get told, if you're talking to somebody who's enthusiastic about lifting, you get told, oh, don't worry, you won't get bulky, right? But either way, we're saying that bulkiness is this negative thing. So one of the first things I did with this chapter was I Googled bulky. I was like, what is the actual definition of this? And it was taking up much space, typically inconveniently. I was like, oh, that's why, right? Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I see it now, right? Because we are talking about, building up our bodies in a muscular way. We're trying to, we're not trying to minimize ourselves. We're trying to take up more space on purpose. We're challenging gender norms. And that is inconvenient for a lot of people. And I think that that's why we've been sold for so long this idea that bulkiness is bad. But as you know from your pursuit of it and my pursuit of it, it's awesome because when you have more muscles, you can do more stuff, right? And also, in fairness, it's really hard.
Yes.
It's really hard to actually put on muscle. But I think it's this really kind of crappy thing we've been told for so much of our lives that this is not the way that you're supposed to look.
Yes.
You're not supposed to take up space.
I feel like I realized at one point that there was this sort of like these two things can't overlap, or it was like I was afraid to ever lift because it was like that it would make me bulky instantly, but also that I was afraid of lifting because it was like so much harder than everything else and like was difficult and complicated to learn. And I was like, those two things don't even like make sense if you try and think those thoughts like in sequence with each other. Like lifting is not like, it actually isn't so difficult, but it also isn't like so straightforward to just like become like a bodybuilder like you see on the cover of a magazine. It's completely different.
Yeah, and you made that point in your article for the cut of like getting bulky is actually the best part, right? It is.
Yeah.
There was something I read the other day and I was kind of shocked by it because I thought we don't see this anymore, but where someone, an actual professional in their field, was like, and if you really want to do something like bar and that's what builds those long, lean muscles. And I was like, oh my God, we're still talking about this? This is not true. That's not how that works.
I can't believe how many people can be like, this isn't true, this isn't how it works. And it's like, and the other party just keeps saying the same thing.
No, it does. It's totally
And
obvious.
it's like,
No,
yeah.
that's not how muscles work. You
No.
can't choose whether they're going to make, first of all, I don't know what long muscles look like. You can't choose to like make your muscles long. That's like I can choose to make myself taller, which I've
Right.
done by
Yes.
now.
Yes. That's like we need some sort of killer logic there or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
Long lean muscles are just what Gwyneth Paltrow looks like, but not all
Yeah.
of us look like that.
Yeah, and Gwyneth Paltrow looks like that because she just doesn't eat a lot of food.
Yes.
Which like I'm also not willing to do.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to be able to pick up heavy stuff.
yeah. I would love, we need like a fitness competition where we have, like, have you watched Special Forces? Does anyone know Special Forces reality show? It's not a good show, but it's like a bunch of like actors and they're not influencers. A lot of reality stars are put through like military training, basically. And I would love to see Gwyneth Paltrow do that specifically, I guess. That's all.
Yeah.
Eric thought. Okay, so you also mentioned that we talked a little about CrossFit, that you competed in the CrossFit
Yeah.
games. And
Oh
you
no,
guys,
not
like,
games.
well, yes,
Well, I guess
this is like a language thing that I think that I don't know. There's like the
The open.
open, so like anyone can do the
Yes.
open. Maybe briefly tell everybody
Yeah.
what the open is.
Yeah, so basically, I think this is one of the coolest things about CrossFit. And CrossFit gets a bad rap for a lot of stuff, but every year, anyone who wants to can compete at like this basic level in their gym for a chance to make it to like the Super Bowl of CrossFit, basically. And it's everyone does the same workout, so you are doing the same workouts as the elite athletes who are probably going to win the CrossFit Games. I think that is really, really cool. One of my lasting memories about that. And it's funny because I think this is a good, segue of like, you don't remember your successes as much as your failures. You learn more from your failures, I think. One of the events that I was doing, it was burpees and barbell thrusters. Barbell thruster, like you basically take the barbell to your shoulders, you squat down, and then you have to press it over your head. That's like one quick movement. They're terrible. They're awful.
And you had to do 85 of them.
80, yeah,
Oh my
like
God.
84 of them.
Oh, man.
With a weight that I had only ever done once. And it was 45 minutes I stood there. So just for reference, everyone else finished in about 12. And the judge that I had with me was like, a bunch of times he was like, do you want to take the weight down? Do you want to stop? And I was like, no. And I kind of, but no. Yeah, and I stood there, and the way that it works is like there's 5 platforms in a room full of people, right? So like I'm standing up there, and every other platform of people is cycling out, and the next person's coming, and the next person's coming, and I'm just taking up this platform. So now I'm like mortified that it's not going well. I'm exhausted. I'm in pain, and I'm like just super, upset that I'm just taking a platform away from somebody else who now just has to wait like an extra hour to go on there. But like I learned from that you're gonna fail more times than you succeed in something. Like that's just how it works. You have to kind of love that. You have to love that process of it, even if it sucks in the moment, or you're never really gonna like the sport.
Yes.
And
And
CrossFit is
all things too.
yeah. That's the thing is like that failure goes from, you take that from the gym. That's one of those things you take outside of the gym too, right? Like you fail a presentation at work, and know that okay, well now I just need to go back and what can I fix? What can I tinker with here to make it so that next time it goes better?
What were you gonna say about CrossFit?
Oh no, I think one of the wonderful things about CrossFit is that when you are sitting there in like your pain cave, just like desperately trying to get through it, everyone stays and they cheer you on, right? And they just make this circle around you, and they will cheer for you the entire time that you're doing it until you are absolutely finished. And that is, I just think that's one of the best things about it. Yeah, I mean, it is a cult. like legitimately, this is a bit of a sidebar, but I remember that when I took my husband with me one time when I was doing CrossFit and I was super into it, and I was like, okay, like come and just try a class, like see if you like it. And 3 separate people over the course of 10 minutes as we moved through the gym said the exact same thing. Oh, you're here for the day? Are you ready to invest in yourself?
Whoa.
And we got out onto the street, and he just sort of gave me this look, and I was like, I know. I see it now. Okay, fine.
They don't do themselves any favors with like the lingo, the highly
No.
specific lingo.
No.
Like, what do you mean? Like,
Right.
have you thought about how is anyone supposed to answer that question?
Yes, but there's, I like to tell people, like, it has that cult-like status for a really good reason. That is because people in CrossFit just want you to do CrossFit because they know how much you're gonna like how your body feels when you start lifting heavy things, right? So it comes from a really good place, if a little bit misguided.
Yes.
There's good intentions.
It's fair. It's fair. I should give it more of a chance, especially now that a lot of them have like rebranded away from CrossFit. They're not
Yeah.
CrossFit anymore. They're like, I know one at least like athletic club, but I think they
Yeah.
just do CrossFit workouts, but it's not called that.
That's it. And for all the lingo, realistically, it is just cardio and weights.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
it
just
was
like your
like-
basic.
I think I found one workout recently where it was like the workout was like half an hour.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not so bad.
There's some that are 8 minutes.
I would rather do some lifting for half an hour than just run for half an hour.
Yeah.
On a lot of
Yeah.
days, you know. Okay, my specific comment on the CrossFit Games participation was you wrote in the book that you posted on Facebook
Yeah.
about doing the CrossFit Open, is that right?
Yeah. CrossFit Open.
And you got a bunch of supportive comments from your friends, and then your mom comes in with just the comment, why?
Yeah.
And I screamed because I was like, that's like something that my mom would do.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like not getting it at all. So I was curious if you had thought much about your mom's relationship with athletics and sports. I mean, maybe just tell us, why would this be so why for her?
Yeah, I think my mom is very risk averse. Is the best way that I can say it. Just things just like make her nervous about, I don't know, like any physical activity. So she had that same reaction to when I signed up to do an Ironman. And she'll come around, like she'll come and she'll cheer for me.
Yeah.
But she's just a little bit nervous about that stuff. But also,
Is she worried you'll get hurt?
Yes, she's definitely worried I'll get hurt. But I think she's also from the generation where, like, she grew up on Jane Fonda. Like, I was, I can to this day sing Leslie Lillian singing "Do It" in a Jane Fonda video. I know that song by heart because I would just do it alongside her, right? And it was like, I don't learn these weird things from that. And it was like we would do a Jane Fonda video, and then my mom would eat Snackwells. We had a lot of Snackwells in our house,
Oh my God.
a cabinet full of them. And
My
it
mom
was-
wasn't a Snapwells person, but she was a Slim Fast person.
Oh, there you go.
A
Yeah.
lot of Slim Fast. All I wanted was to have a Slim Fast.
Yes.
Like chocolate milk. She was like, you
Yes.
can't have it. I was like,
Right, and it's this idea also, like, I don't know if your mom said the same thing, but I got a lot of, I can't keep this in the house. I just can't have this around, right? And I don't think our parents realize how much that kind of messed with us growing up, but it was, you internalize a lot of that. And it was the same thing with fitness. I internalized this idea that I was working out to slim down, right? I was always working out to make myself less. And lifting lets you make yourself more.
yeah. I don't think they had that psychology of like not keeping snacks in the house. They were like, that's just a good idea, and not
Yeah.
like, oh, that's gonna like mess up
Snacks
my
are
children
great.
forever.
Yeah.
We were living in another time
Yeah.
psychologically.
Yeah.
Maybe let me ask you what your favorite experience was in reporting the book, or favorite conversation.
Yeah. I had a lot of really amazing conversations. A lot of them happened when I traveled. I traveled twice to two different world championship strongman games. And
Where
one
were
of them, one was in Daytona Beach, Florida, which I can't recommend less of a place to go to. It's something. And then the other one was in Columbus, Ohio for the Arnold, which is wild and really cool, and I would go back to it not hurt.
I've never been to the Arnold, but I want to
It was really cool. I feel like for your research for your book,
Yeah.
I really like it. It's basically, just for reference, it's 80 different strength sports and about 20,000 people under one roof over the course of, it was like 2 or 3 days.
And this is Arnold, like the Arnold
The Arnold.
Schwarzenegger,
Yes.
where he was just like, I want everybody to come and do sport
Yeah.
in Ohio.
Yeah, exactly. This is the place, guys.
Yes.
He lives here, but he wants you to go to Ohio.
Yeah.
But it was, so official strongman games in Daytona, there was one day where I was standing outside of the arena and I was talking to this guy who, his name's Colin Bryce. He's just a huge figure in the world of strongman. And I'm interviewing him about how he got into strength and all of his feelings about it. And this other athlete, this guy Nick Best, who is an 11-time, I think, world's strongest man competitor. He's in his 50s now. The man is like 6.5 feet tall, like as wide as 2 linebackers, bald head, goatee. He looks like a comic book villain in real life. And Colin brings him over, says, Nick Best, like, how did you get into strength training? And all of a sudden, this guy, this huge, scary looking guy, starts to get tears in his eyes. And he's like, that's a tough question. And we kind of both are like taken aback by this. And he starts to tell us about how he had this abusive childhood, and he decided that he didn't want anybody to be able to do that to him anymore. And he went to the gym, and in his words, he's like, I got big and strong, and no one ever did that to me again. And he's just, he has stuck with that his whole life. And he talked to me about it. He's like, you're only a victim if you don't work towards changing your circumstances. So he was one of my favorites. I also spoke to this incredible woman who has endured 2 strokes. And she was not a lifter. She didn't do strength before this happened. But afterwards, when she was kind of in her recovery from this and she'd gotten well enough to do more things, she was like, I need a new hobby. And she could have like picked up crocheting. But she remembered seeing World's Strongest Man on ESPN. It was like, I'm going to do that. And started doing it. And she broke a world record in the deadlift. And she talks about how to this day, when she's going for like a heavy lift, she sometimes has to rip her weight belt off because she can't feel her core muscles. That's just one of the things that's left over from the stroke. She can't feel her brace. She takes off her shoes because it's hard for her to feel her feet on the ground. And she's like, and I asked her, why this? Why push to this extent? And she said to me, because when you're almost dead, it takes a hell of a lot more to feel alive. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Chills.
Yeah. So they were really incredible. And then I will tell one story from the Arnold because this is one of the coolest things I've ever witnessed in real life. So at the Arnold, they have this record breakers event where they bring out, stones and various things. And they bring out a couple of the athletes who they think might be able to break a world record. And they brought out these replicas of these historical lifting stones called the Dinnie stones, which are a combined 733 pounds between these 2 stones. Okay, and there's like iron rings attached to them. You lift them up from the ground. You just have to stand up with them. And it was the women were going. 2 previous world's strongest women tried to lift it, missed it. And then this woman, her name is Chloe Brennan, goes up. Chloe is 140 pounds for reference on what she's about to try to lift. And she tries the first time, and the back stone, which is a little bit lighter, comes up. The front one doesn't. She's got another chance, and she goes back, and she gets chalk on her hands, and she claps her hands, and there's this huge dust cloud of chalk. And she literally just rages through it like she's in a movie, and goes up, goes to pick up the stones again, and gets them both off the ground. And doesn't even realize it. You see her kind of wait for the judge's reaction.
It's such a small, it's like,
It's
they
an
move
inch.
like an inch.
Yeah, they come just an inch off the ground. And she did it, and just her reaction of she starts running around in circles. And she's doing this all in front of this woman, Jan Todd, who was the first ever woman to lift those stones. And watching that kind of moment of history, it was so cool.
I don't think I knew that about Jan Todd. Jan Todd is like a scholar of strength training history.
Yeah.
She's interviewed often.
Yeah, she is incredible.
Maybe I don't know how much more time we want to talk versus questions,
Yeah.
but I can think of a couple more. I would love to hear maybe like a most surprising or a surprising fact that you learned while recording the book that just sort of stuck with you.
Yeah. Okay. This is one of my favorite things. So, it started by talking about the miscarriage and kind of coming to get back to strength training afterwards, and how that really sort of helped me kind of heal from it. And one of the things, and I didn't know how that was possible. I was just like, this helps, but I don't really know how. And it was one of the things I was the most excited to research when I was writing this book. And I spoke to 2 different people. So one was somebody from a group called Trauma Informed Weightlifting. Her name's Mariah Rooney. And then the other was a woman named Laura Kudari, who wrote a book also about healing from trauma through weightlifting. And in talking to them, I started to understand that when I went back into the gym afterwards, let's say I wanted to do like a heavy deadlift, in order to keep my back and my body safe when I'm doing that. I have to brace my core muscles, right? And I've got a weight belt on. So I'm bracing my muscles. I'm taking this big breath and I'm pressing my abdomen out against the weight belt. And I have to, in the moment that I'm going for that lift, in order for me to execute that safely, I have to believe that this part of my body that has been kind of a place where I felt weak and broken, I have to also believe in that moment that it can be a place of strength where I'm not going to be able to lift. And that was a really incredible kind of thing to understand about how lifting heavy things helped me heal from something that was so traumatic.
And then I guess like your perspective, I mean, you come from a lot of, you have like CrossFit angle, strongman
Yeah,
angle, you're a personal trainer, you are a personal trainer, were a personal trainer.
Yeah.
If someone wanted to sort of start, like they're reading your book and they're like, okay, I'm feeling like strong energy and I want to like dive in. What do you think? What advice do you give generally to someone maybe like you don't have back or whatever, but like what's a good like first step?
I mean, there is this great ebook that
Well, that was not what I was
the
going
barbell that Casey wrote, which is fantastic. But yeah, I tell people in a couple different things. If you have the means, I usually say like working one-on-one with somebody is the best thing that you can possibly do, right? Because you want somebody to be able to watch your body move, because you are going to move different than somebody else. Outside of that, if you can do small group training, again, so that you get that individual attention, that's really important.
I think that's something people don't know exists. It's like smaller training, and there's like a lot more and more. I feel like I see like intro classes to lifting.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't feel so conspicuous where you're like engaging a personal trainer.
Yeah.
But you're just like joining the class.
Well, and the weight room too, like, you know, people are terrified of going into a weight room. I still get scared if I'm in a weight room. I went to the original Gold's Gym yesterday and I was like, it was like I'd forgotten how to lift weights when I walked in there. I was like, I don't know where things are, and people are looking at me, and even though they're not, and maybe I should just go stand here and lift like the one thing that I know I'm comfortable lifting. It's super intimidating. It's still super broy. There's really not a lot that's different about that. But you know, beyond the kind of small group training and the one-on-one, if people don't, you know, want to start there, I usually say another good way to do it is like finding an app that has video, so that you can watch somebody else doing movements that they're telling you to do. And then also taking video of yourself, right? You don't have to post it to social media. I know it feels like awkward in the gym to take a video of yourself, but you might think your body's moving one way, and then you look at the video and you're like, oh no, like I'm rounding my back, or I'm doing something weird with one of my body parts that it shouldn't be doing, and it doesn't look like the video. And then beyond that, I just say, you know, start with body weight at home. And when you feel good about that, you progress to lifting stuff at home. Pick up, you know, a gallon water jug and do like a goblet squat with it. I sometimes just pick up my kids as weights, which I said on a podcast recently. It was like a parenting podcast. And they were like, you know what, all the years we've been doing this podcast, no one has suggested using your children as weights. You're welcome.
I've got an increasing number of women, especially but parents who are like, there was somebody said something so sweet in the Discord that I have associated with my newsletter over there. There's some sort of quote, almost wine mom sort of Facebook meme quote that's like, one day you'll put your children down and then never pick them up again because they'll be too big. And they were like, that will not be me. Pick my children up for like forever, and that's what I'm like working toward.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was so cute.
I love that.
Amazing. But
Can we put that on like shirts instead of the like live, laugh, love?
Yeah.
It's wine time.
Make something more concise.
Yeah. That needs to go on.
Yeah. Okay,
Do we
well,
want to take questions?
anybody have a question?
Yes,
You
do.
Well, I'm interested in, you mentioned using weightlifting and using strength training after you had your miscarriage as a way to gain emotional strength. Have you seen any other instances where physical strength translates into strength in other areas?
Yeah, almost everything. I think the biggest thing for me has been kind of learning the learning failure through strength training has really changed how I see that outside of the gym. I was like really averse to failure as a kid. And part of that comes from the fact that I had this like core childhood memory of playing Little League baseball and never hitting the ball. And then I found out in my 20s that I had never actually swung the bat because I was just so scared of failure, apparently. And this was like for 10 years, I didn't know that. So I told myself this 10-year long story that I was just like bad at athletics. I didn't realize it was just that I never even tried. And so most of what I did when I went into fitness was stuff that it was harder to fail at, right? So like when I would go out for a run, even if I was running the longest distance I'd ever run, I knew for the most part that like when I left the house for that run, barring something else happening, I was going to finish that distance, even if I had to walk part of it, or even if I had to go slower than I wanted to. But when I go into the gym to lift, I don't know that day if the weight that I want to pick up is going to go off the floor or not. And I have to accept that failure is going to happen a lot more than success.
More questions, other questions.
As a trainer and coach, it's clear you've honed different strategies for addressing challenges in life and the gym. And I see like three main fundamentals of that, of breaking it down, like into smaller bite-sized pieces, having someone to champion or coach you through it, or connecting with that why. So I'm curious if you can talk through like how you've honed that pivot skill. I'm sure it's kind of innate at this point. But yeah, I just love to know
Of just kind of like the why of it.
like what strategy you choose based on the adversity, or if it's just kind of like you choose it, you kind of know the best based on your experience. Because I feel like in fertility, reminding yourself of the why can possibly not be helpful. Like just reminding yourself, I want to be pregnant. That's
Yeah,
so
yes.
why you choose maybe a different strategy and how you
Yeah.
choose.
I think, having your why all the time doesn't always work. One of the best things that I was told by somebody that I worked with for the book, I actually ended up working with a performance psychologist. And we talked a lot about this kind of fear of failure. And she was like, I think for you, you have to not think so much about stuff outside of just what you're doing in that moment. So she kind of coached me, like when you're going for those lifts that scare you, just focus on the cues that you have for yourself. So she would have me put like 3 cues down on a piece of paper and look at those every time that I went. And it was basically like, I wasn't allowed to think this weight's heavy, it's scary. I also wasn't even allowed to think, this weight is heavy, it's not scary. Like none of those kind of outside thoughts. And I find that that's really helpful outside of the gym too, is like, okay, if I'm focusing on something that I'm nervous about doing, like what are the parts that I can control in it? I think that's been a really interesting kind of takeaway from it. Is that okay?
For sure. Thanks.
Other questions? Do we get questions like online? Do people like interactive? Do you know?
Usually, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
How do we know?
how do we know? Would they just be there? I mean, I can't see that outside.
It doesn't look like we
I
have
just wanna
any
make
right
sure.
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about in here?
Well, in relation to because I love how you looked at the actual definition of bulky.
Yeah.
And I feel like somewhere along the way, bulky was attributed to the human physical, like the physical appearance of a human, but bulky could be like a bulky box. Like it doesn't need
Yeah.
to be necessarily associated with people. So that was just something that stood out to me, and I feel like I wanted to ask you to clarify in your own way, like why I guess you felt almost called to look up the definition and then break it down for yourself and in relation to taking up space as a human being rather than making yourself smaller in relation to working out, because I think that was also something really powerful that you said.
Yeah, thank you. I think, it's one of those things that in like the world of lifting, you hear it so much, this idea of like, you don't want to get bulky. And I never understood why that was such a negative thing, but I did understand that for my whole life, I didn't want that, right? I was just like, I want to be smaller. Like grew up in the era of, Kate Moss and the nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, which is I mean, the level to which I internalize that is alarming in a lot of ways. So this was one of the things that I talk about in the book was I started training for a national level competition, and I wanted to put on mass for that competition. And I really thought when I did that, especially because I was doing that while I was writing the book and I was kind of, learning a lot more about this, I really thought that it would be this kind of amazing moment where I went from like wanting to be smaller to wanting to be bigger and everything would be great. And I didn't realize how much I would battle back and forth with that, where there was this constant struggle of like, I can lift more weight, but my jeans don't fit the same way. And I had to constantly go every time I would put on clothes that weren't gym clothes. I had to constantly go, what do you care about more? Do you care about being able to perform at nationals? Because, and I use this phrasing in the book, like the keg I have to put over my head is not going to be so enamored with the shape of my ass as to like fly into the air and rapture. Like I have to lift that myself. Like I have to have the strength to do that. And it doesn't matter what my body looks like for that. So I think because that was such a struggle, it sort of compelled me to go like, why does this matter to me so much? Because objectively, no one else gives a shit about how I look in my jeans. It's just me. So I don't think I came out the other side being like everything is amazing and this is how I want to kind of be the rest of my life. It is this back and forth thing, but I know that I like how being strong feels better than anything else.
Others.
I was going to ask maybe a dumb question. I think I asked.
No.
There's strength training and there's weightlifting,
Yeah.
and certainly I was awfully confused about those things.
The difference between each one.
Yeah, and how do these communities relate, and are they both sort of growing? Is one growing at the expense of the other? So what's going on?
Yeah. So there's kind of, I would say like 4 main types of lifting. So you've got CrossFit, which is that mix of cardio and strength. You have weightlifting, which with a capital W is Olympic weightlifting, which is literally 2 lifts. It's the snatch and the clean and jerk. And that's it. And there's a lot of precision to it and you have to execute them perfectly. There is powerlifting, which is the squat, the bench, and deadlift. Again, just 3 things. And then there is strongman, which is kind of lifting really weird objects that are heavy and then like either just putting them back down or carrying them for a while or throwing them or putting them over something else. And it can be almost anything. I mean, CrossFit I think is kind of continuously growing. I like to think that they're all growing, but strongman is like one of the oldest, most primal sports, and it's kind of never really gotten to that big marquee level. I don't know why. I think feels kind of intimidating for people.
It's a little more like esoteric, the tools, the raw,
Yeah.
like the stones and the
Yeah.
everybody has the handles, the
log.
axle press,
Yeah.
log press.
Yeah, it has the lowest barrier to entry of all of them, which is kind
Yeah.
of funny because you can literally go outside and just pick up rocks and logs and stuff.
Right.
And like, congratulations, you're doing strongman. You can go find a keg in your local bar and be like, can I take this up? It's really, I mean, some of the best strongman athletes in the world are still lifting with like DIY stuff in their garages. So
It's cool.
I would say strength training is kind of like the umbrella, the big tent over all of those
Yes.
things. It's like if you are training in any way to like progressively get stronger, you're doing strength training. It doesn't matter if you're doing snatches and clean and jerks or you're squatting or you're using dumbbells or you're using barbells. It's like all strength training is the pursuit and not the sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Who else?
well, thank you guys all
Yeah.
for being here. Casey has cards for 20% off of her book Liftoff.
Yeah.
And then we have copies of mine there, which I will
And
be
you
happy
have
to sign for
stickers,
everybody.
too.
And I have cute stickers that you can take if you buy a book,
Yeah.
which is fun.
That's it.
And that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
you.